everybody. Welcome back to Cocktails and Rocktails with me, your most notorious groupie, Alice Rouse, author of this little guy right here and these books as well, where you can get everything, you guys, my merchandise, Patreon, all kinds of stuff down in that description. Today's cocktail, go, because we are having cocktails. We always do. I love it. Love day drinking with you guys. And you know what I love? The community we've built here. All the new people coming, discovering this channel. Thank you so much. Everybody who supported me from the beginning, who's supporting me from behind, their computers, just lurking. Welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for all the love and support as always. And speaking of love and support, we are going way local today. We are going to be talking about the movie Salt Lake City Punk, SLC Punk. Because you guys, I cannot even tell you how much this describes the Salt Lake City that I knew. And the people that were in this movie. So we are going to have, and the cocktail that goes with that, it's actually called the Lake, oh God, I got a hair in there. But it's actually called the Lake, me and my hair. It's called the Lake Erie, but today we're going to call it the Great Salt Lake. Because we're talking about the Great Salt Lake. That's a song by a band called Band of Horses. They're not from Salt Lake, but they even made a tribute song to the Great Salt Lake. So everybody, grab your legs, kick up your feet. Let's have a little cocktails and rocktails, shall we? Cheers, big ears. Okay, good. Because the blue carousel, everything kind of balances out. And I don't normally like super sweet blue carousel-y drinks, but this one is delicious. I just threw raspberries in there for kind of shits and giggles to look better because it was just all blue. So we needed a little something floating because we're going to talk about things floating in the Great Salt Lake. So, all right, you guys. So the movie SLC Punk, was written and directed by a man called James Marandino. Now, James moved to Salt Lake City when he was about 6 years old. He graduated high school at 19, I believe, moved to Los Angeles in 1985. So as I was moving in, he was moving out. Now, I say this crowd from the Great Salt Lake was based upon the Speedway crowd, that punk club I always talk about. But when the Speedway had just started kind of happening when James was moving out. And there was another club that had a lot of really good punk shows, new wave shows, stuff like that. That was a really, really great place that was still around during Speedway, and I hung out at it, called Brick. So this is probably where a lot of this crowd came from, cruising State Street on Friday and Saturday nights, like in American Graffiti and stuff. That old school, everybody's converging into one place kind of scene. There was a couple places down on State Street, Randy's and Raunch Records and the Heavy Metal Shop. You guys, the Heavy Metal Shop is like renowned. A lot of stuff like that. So this is all kind of part of that same scene that I was part of. And I knew some of the same people that James did. So a lot of people in this movie, these are based on real people. And I'm like, oh, I know who that is. I'm pretty sure that's, David or Paul, from Speedway, stuff like that. So it's a really, really cool movie for me to watch because I get to see people that I knew around the scene when I was first emerging onto it and he was just coming out of it. Like, we didn't cross paths, I don't think, because like I said, he had moved to Los Angeles, eventually moved to New York, which I believe James lives there now, but we definitely knew the same people. We still know a couple of the same people here in Salt Lake City. So now a lot of things he put in this movie are so Salt Lake City from the 80s and early 90s and stuff. Landmarks as teenagers and stuff that we all saw or did. And one of those is the acid scene where they're dropping and they're just tripping balls. And you see they're in this kind of place where there's these monuments, a little river, all these really cool benches and gazebos and stuff. Well, that's actually Memory Grove. With that's downtown Salt Lake City, in the middle of downtown Salt Lake City, there's this really cool little canyon area. You can see the Capitol building right there. And it's really great. There's a really cool walking trail by the river and stuff. But back in the 80s, when James would have been around it, and when I first came to Salt Lake City, this place was really run down. There was a lot of homeless, a lot of, Satanism, different type of religions, Wiccans, which I incorporate, Wiccan into my daily religion because I believe in the connection between the earth and people and God and everything, So anyway, but so this place was really, really run down in the 80s when James was living here. And it was, like I said, a lot of degenerates. We dropped acid, we went there. If we wanted to find drugs, we went there, but it's since cleaned up and so this acid trip were there and they're going to the top. You think they're going to all these different places, but no, it's just like this little canyon and they have all these stairs that go up into the neighborhood and the avenues and you can look all around the city and this whole scene is just like, oh yeah, been there, done that. Who hasn't from that time in Salt Lake City, And like I said, I'm pretty sure I know the characters that Heroin Bob and of course James, Stephen was him in the movie. Because James, really, really kind of embodied Matthew Lillard's character that he wrote for the movie, that James wrote. Because James actually, let's finish Memory Grove. But yeah, Memory Grove is where they've since cleaned up Memory Grove. But just in case, because of all the rituals that went there, if you're walking into Memory Grove, and I do have a video of this on my Facebook that I'll try and find and kind of put in here with you guys. If you're walking in, they redid the stone pathways. Like this side, there's a bunch of the beautiful old houses, just gorgeous Victorian houses, amazing. It's a really beautiful neighborhood. And just a tiny little street that takes you up there. So when you're walking in, there's this big gate, because they don't allow cars in there, but they do have wedding events. So there's a big gate, and there's two little pathways that you can walk on in between on each side of the gate. And on the right side of the gate, if you're walking in, when you look down at the stone pavement, what they did when they renewed this park and refurbished it and made it like a safer, more wonderful place to go, was they put a pentagram in the, in the pavement as protection, just to be on the safe side. So this is kind of, the Memory Grove, if you grew up in Salt Lake City, you grew up going there, everybody runs there, everybody rides their bikes there, their dogs are off leashes. So that's actually where this acid scene was filmed. Okay, so let's get back to kind of a little bit more onto James's background. So James went to a private Catholic high school, which, of course, it's a private Catholic high school, which means, yes, he actually did come from a little more comfortable circumstances. Because it's right up here, right down the road from where I live is where Judge Memorial is. And just about a couple blocks away on a side street right there is Roland Hall's, the Episcopalian private school, which my sister and I were supposed to go to when we moved here, but we begged my mom not to. We didn't want to go to the private school. We didn't want to go through the whole parochial thing, stuff like that. And incidentally, Boucher, the other groupie that when we came on the scene, she went there as well. And along with Eric, and I talk about Eric, who I met before I moved to Salt Lake City, and he was telling me about Boucher, and he's the one I went to my first concert with. So that's, it's kind of more of an upper scale neighborhood. But it's really a mix because it's close to the U, it's close to Westminster. So Judge Memorial, that's where James went. So his character that Matthew Lillard plays is really close because that character comes from money but decides just to rebel and be punk. And that was Salt Lake City at the time. And I could see James doing that. James is still rebelling, still is punk. And he made a Slc Punk too, but we'll talk about that later. So that's kind of James's background. So he actually really, really kind of, that Matthew Lillard character, Steve-O, and Heroin Bob, they really existed. And they were very true to their backgrounds, So I really love that about him because, but it also kind of, he kind of came from a privileged background and walked onto the Slc Punk scene. Because the music scene, especially back then with the Speedway, with Brick, all that, the punk scene was insane here. So that, it's just so, whenever I watch this movie, it's so heartwarming to me because, like I said, it embodies my teenage years in Salt Lake City as well. And they show, like, going up to Wyoming to buy beer. Oh, that is a rite of passage here. And it wasn't just to buy Higher Point beer, because you can get Higher Point beer just at the liquor stores here, not at the grocery stores. We went up to Wyoming to buy kegs, because you couldn't get kegs in Utah unless you were a bar or restaurant. So we would go up there to buy kegs, and like I said, they go up and do this in the movie, and they buy the beer and stuff, and they come down, and it's exactly what all of us did here. And it's so cool that, you know, these generations, because he's a few years older than me, about 5 years older than me, 3 maybe. I graduated in 88, so he graduated in 85 and left. So, yeah, he's about 3 or 4 years older than me. So this was still carrying over even after he left, and some of these places are still tradition. Like going up to Wyoming. When my friends and I did it, the first time we did it, we went up to, you drive up through Park City, go through, yeah, but anyway, so you just, we're cruising, my friends and I were, and Jill and Danny and our friend Dana and me were all in her dad's Jeep Cherokee, and we were, of course, smoking the bowl as we do, cruising down this last drive by Jeremy Ranch, this last big hill that goes down because you have to come up the canyon. So we're driving and we're smoking a bowl, and Jill gets it. She's driving. There's a semi right here, and there's 2 other lanes to the right. Bunch of cars, right? So we hit black ice. It's in the winter, and we hit black ice, and all of a sudden you just kind of feel it. And Jill's trying to get control. We end up on 2 wheels spinning across the whole highway. And all you hear the whole time is Dana go, oh, shit. Like slow motion. And Dana wasn't always the brightest bulb in the Christmas tree, but she's a sweet person. She's hilarious. I loved her. So we almost died, and we ended up like the opposite direction. Once we stopped spinning, we ended up that opposite direction, facing the end. Somehow we did not hit one car. We did not wreck anything. We didn't flip, nothing. We just spun, ended up and these cars were stopped like easily 100 feet away from us, easily. Just they saw it coming, the semi, how we did not, because we were so close to the back end of that semi, how we did not get clipped by that, I don't know. But we still went to Wyoming and got our kegs, because my mom was gone for the summer. We had some house parties. We did. And that's, you know, that's a big part of the SLC Punk scene as well, because back then everybody was having house parties. We're going up to Wyoming. We're stocking up on the kegs and the beer, everything, getting whatever else we want for the jungle juice, you know, the Everclear, whatever. So that, again, is a huge part of Salt Lake City, you know, urban legend if you lived here. And it's just so cool to see all this. So, and that was really cool because, like I said, he was leaving when I was coming, and the Speedway was kind of taking over what the Brick used to be. So the crowd was shifting. But like I said, I got to know all that crowd too, which was really awesome. And another thing that they show in the movie, like everything they show in the movie, every place where they go, even the kid that's doing acid, I swear to God, I know him. So there's a kid in the movie who's really sweet, really kind, really funny. Everybody loves him. He's just a goofy kid. He drops acid and never comes back from the trip and ends up kind of homeless on the streets because the parents kicked him out. And this actually was very common back then. Like I say, there was a place down on West Temple and 100 South, right across the street from the Marriott, this old abandoned building that used to be a squat house for the kids who got kicked out, the Lost Boys who were kicked out of the Jeff and Warren Jeff's FLDS cult, because, you know, can't have the younger boys marrying those young girls, could they? So even that kid on the acid, never came back from the acid trip, whose mom kicked him out, and you know, the characters help at the end. he even existed. Like, I knew that kid. I swear to God, I know who that kid is. I cannot remember his name, but we would see him quite often, and we'd bring him food over from the Marriott when we were hanging out with bands, invite him to come hang out, because he was a cool kid. He just was a little bit, like I said, didn't come back from the whole acid trip. So that kid existed, and you guys, if you haven't seen this movie, you've got to watch it, because it does evoke the spirit of the time for anybody who was in that scene, whether it be Salt Lake City, Los Angeles, New York. We all understand it. We all get it. You know, and a lot of people actually came from a lot more privilege in the punk scene than you think, than you really, really know. And I like that he was really true about that, true to that. And he was true to just everything. Like I said, floating the car, we'd all go out to the Great Salt Lake. We all knew the legend that if you pushed your car out there because of the salt, I mean, we could float. We would go floating out on the Great Salt Lake. You would smell like brine shrimp for about 3-4 days, and your mom would know you were out drinking out of the Great Salt Lake. Don't swim in it, people. You can't swim in it anymore because it's a lot lower than it used to be. But every little tiny bit of that Salt Lake where the guy pushes the car, the stolen car, into the lake and it floats away, about once a week. Once a week here in Salt Lake City at the time. They'd be like, they pulled another car. I mean, it just became common. 3 cars were pulled out of Great Salt Lake today. Drugs were found inside. Yeah, they were probably everybody I knew from Brighton. But, and the old mill. Oh, there's the old mill, the old place where you see that is a club where they meet the guy from Denmark or wherever that threw the car out into the Salt Lake and stuff. That place still exists to this day, and it was known back then to be kind of, we would go crash. It was kind of a gift shop, and maybe had a restaurant in it back in the day, but it kind of closed down and fallen into disrepair. And it was like, 5 minutes from where I grew up, where I went to high school, where I lived and stuff. So it was just, you go out onto this one road, then you go back down into another little valley area of Salt Lake City. And here's the old mill. It was not a club, though, but they use it in the movie as a club. Oh, and just a side note about this movie, one of the producers, who at the time, and I think he still does, lives in Orem, is the drummer from Rancid. Well, he produced Salt Lake City Punk, SLC Punk, too. Because in the movie, Heroin Bob, the kind of straight edge one, who just drank, never did a drug in his life, and passes away at the end. That really happened as well, by the way. That happened. But he has a girlfriend, and she owns this, kind of head shop type of thing, and that was actually based on what I believe that was based on the Cosmic Airplane, which was another Salt Lake City staple, like Heavy Metal Shop, like Raunch Records, like Randy's Records, stuff like that. So everything he does is just spot on to Salt Lake City at the time, even during my time, for years to come. So Cosmic Airplane, that's where the girlfriend works at. We'll get back to that in a minute. I think I've actually covered everything I want to cover about the little things he puts on and the house parties. But like I said, I know who people are in the house parties. One of those guys ended up opening up the Speedway with ZJ Speed and stuff. And it was just such an eclectic scene. You had your punks, you had your hippies, you had your psychedelics, you had your preps, you had your rockers. We all converged on the same scene. And somehow in between all of our differences in taste of music, we found commonalities and we found camaraderie in just the Salt Lake City life, the scene, everything, the places we went, to buy our records, to get our stuff, So that was, I really love how he just gets everything spot on. And like I said, I have my own stories with every one of these things. And I think anybody who's lived in Salt Lake City does, even to where his girlfriend worked at the Cosmic Airplane. Now, we're going to get into kind of Salt Lake City Punk, too. Because Salt Lake City Punk, it was kind of a sleeper, but then it didn't do great at the box office. I believe it came out during Sundance, when Sundance was really an independent filmmaking platform instead of Hollywood invading it like it has for the past decade. But Salt Lake City's SLC Punk kind of became a cult classic and a cult hit. So years and years later, he decided to make SLC Punk 2, which I have friends whose bands are playing in there. I look at that movie and I see my friends because they're actually in the movie and acting in the movie. So it's really cool to see that. But he kind of left off from Salt Lake City Punk to where the girlfriend... Okay, so at the end of SLC Punk, I'm just going to give it away, Heroin Bob passes away accidentally because his girlfriend gave him some, I want to say Percocet, and with alcohol, and he had never taken Percocet before in his life, so he passes away. Well, SLC Punk 2 picks up where that leaves off, and the girlfriend ended up being pregnant after Heroin Bob passes away, and it kind of follows this child. They were actually going to do it in New Orleans, but then the drummer of Rancid, who was, he was working with producing the movie, and who after seeing SLC Punk had kind of went around Salt Lake City and experienced, but he lives in Orem, which is where BYU and a horde of Mormons live. So I don't know if he's just living there because, Happy Valley is so twisted. You guys know of allegations recently with BYU. Very true. And so how the drummer Rancid lives down there, not up in downtown Salt Lake City or, up by the U or the Avenues or somewhere Capitol Hill is beyond me. So he must be sober and switched to Mormon. But so they were going to film this SLC2 in New Orleans. But then the drummer Rancid was like, hey, no, we've got to film it here in Salt Lake City. It's the vibe. So James was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And they were filming it in the Salt Lake City that happened after the 2002 Olympics. And for me, it was just really lame. It relied too much on the gloominess of the Heroin Bob's girlfriend and the kid's mother, and just kind of repeating everything that was going on in Salt Lake City. So that to me was kind of a bummer. Watch SLC Punk 1 and then watch number 2 and you'll see what I'm talking about. Like, it was trying too hard to... I was hoping it would more kind of follow Steve-O, Matthew Lillard's character, that really embodied James. I was hoping it would be more of him like going to New York and then coming back to Salt Lake City and kind of following up on the music scene then and the punk scene and the people from the original movie. But unfortunately, they went in a different direction. And I could see, at the beginning I was kind of like, okay, I'm following this. I got this. Okay, this is cool. But it just kind of Salt Lake City at the time when the 2002 Olympics happened, just really, it wasn't the same vibe. The groupie scene had long gone. Speedway was gone. Brick was gone. All the good places. You couldn't cruise State Street anymore. Kids weren't going up to Wyoming as much. The old mill is now, a productive business for a long time. So they really didn't have the same experience. So this kid trying to have the same experience as a father he never met was really kind of the basis of the movie, and I think it failed the original movie. I think SLC Punk 2 should have been more about Steve-O and then coming back, and he does come back in the movie, but like I said, it's not the same vibe. But kind of describes Salt Lake City after, the 90s when we left and the greatest groupie scene of the 80s disbanded, so kind of shows, so it kind of does fit, I guess, because it was that kind of down curve in Salt Lake City had become a lot more boring, but it just didn't involve like that music scene that's still that vital killer part of Salt Lake City that really just thrives and still carries that energy and everything. So kind of bummed on Salt Lake City SLC Punk 2. But SLC Punk 1, you guys, watch it. It's truly everything Salt Lake City was at the time. But he just didn't go too far into the music scene in general, which I think an SLC Punk 3 should really do. Delve more into that music scene after 1985 when he left. because he knows it was still like a vital scene. Hey, James, here's an idea. Contact me. We have mutual friends. How about doing SLC Groupie? Kind of the real follow-up to SLC Punk 1. So, there you guys go. SLC Punk, excellent movie. Totally embodies, like, I have everything in that movie. Anybody who's lived here that I've known that's still here since high school, that was involved in the punk scene or the speedway scene or brick or, downtown lifestyle, everybody has a story for every bit of that movie. It's absolutely amazing, you guys. And anybody who is, in the music scene, wherever you live during that time, you'll get it too, because, it's about these two kids who discover music together, who were playing Dungeons and Dragons in their basement when Bob was like, no, I went to LA, I visited a brother or cousin or something, and he turned me on to this music, and it was like the Ramones and oh my God, more than the Ramones, but you know what I mean? And that's kind of how the journey starts, and how they kind of started, and how their journey ended. But like I said, totally embodies the life that I knew and people that I knew here in Salt Lake City. So watch both guys back to back and kind of see what I'm talking about, and compare, and, like I say, SLC Punk 3, James. Let's talk about it. Let's do SLC Groupie Part 1. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed my little babble today about the movie SLC Punk, and that the reality, so much of that movie is reality. And I think we can all identify from back in the 80s, because we all had our own little group in every city, and SLC Punk captured mine. So it's pretty awesome. All right, guys. As I said, thank you so much to everybody who made it through the whole video to the end of this video. You guys rock. And I'm going to start doing stuff for everybody who's made it to the end of the video, and lots of stuff coming. I know I've said that for a while, but life happens, and I haven't been able to do as much as I want to do to thank you guys for really making this an amazing community and an amazing family, just like we were for the SLC Punk days. So, and if you're just lurking, come on, you guys, join the family. Go down, hit that share, hit the like, hit my bells, become a part of the become part of the family here at Cocktails and Rocktails. Cheers, big ears.